New York City, NBC Studios, Studio 8H, Saturday, April 8th, 2000, 11:47 p.m. 13 minutes until Saturday Night Live goes live to the nation. The studio audience is buzzing with excitement. Crew members make final adjustments to lights and cameras. In the dressing room corridor, cast members run through last-minute script changes and practice their entrances. But in dressing room 6, something extraordinary is happening. Christopher Walken, legendary actor and that night's host, is having a conversation with writer Will Ferrell that will accidentally create one of the most quoted comedy sketches in television history. Neither of them knows they're about to birth a cultural phenomenon that will outlive their careers, spawn countless internet memes, and turn Christopher Walken into something he never expected to be: comedy gold. The sketch they're discussing seems insignificant. It's called More Cowbell, and it's scheduled to air in the second half of the show. It's about a behind-the-scenes recording session for Blue Oyster Cult's song Don't Fear the Reaper. Will Ferrell plays a cowbell player who thinks his instrument is the key to the place. Song success. Christopher Walken plays the producer who agrees with him. On paper, it's a throwaway bit. 5 minutes of absurd comedy to fill time between bigger sketches. Nobody expects it to become legendary. Nobody expects it to redefine Christopher Walken's public image. Nobody expects that 23 years later, people will still be quoting it daily. But here's what makes this story incredible. The sketch almost didn't happen. Christopher Walken almost turned it down. And when he finally agreed to do it, his approach was so unexpected, so committed, so perfectly Walken, that it elevated silly comedy into something approaching art. Let's rewind to 3 days earlier. Wednesday afternoon, NBC offices, the Saturday Night Live writers' room. Will Ferrell and his writing partner Donnell Campbell are brainstorming sketches for Christopher Walken's hosting gig. They need comedy ideas that will work with Walken's unique persona. But here's the problem. Christopher Walken isn't traditionally funny. He's intense, mysterious, occasionally menacing. His most famous roles are in thrillers and dramas. How do you write comedy for an actor whose specialty is making people uncomfortable? That's when Will Ferrell has an idea that will change everything. What if we take Christopher Walken seriously, he suggests? What if we don't ask him to be funny? What if we put him in a ridiculous situation and let him play it completely straight? The concept is counterintuitive. Most comedy hosts try to show their range by being obviously funny. But Will Ferrell understands something about comedy that most people miss. Sometimes the funniest thing is when someone doesn't realize they're being funny. They brainstorm scenarios. What ridiculous situation could Christopher Walken approach with total seriousness? That's when Donnell Campbell mentions a random fact he heard. The cowbell part in Blue Oyster Cult's Don't Fear the Reaper was recorded by a session musician who insisted his contribution was essential to the song's success. That's it, Will says. Christopher Walken is a music producer who's obsessed with cowbell. He thinks it's the most important instrument in rock and roll. They write the sketch in 2 hours. It's simple, almost simplistic. A recording session where the cowbell player, Will Ferrell, keeps asking for more cowbell, and the producer, Christopher Walken, keeps encouraging him. The band members think they're crazy, but Walken's character is absolutely convinced that cowbell is the secret ingredient that makes music magical. The script is sent to Christopher Walken's representatives. His first response is confusion. "I don't understand the joke," he tells his publicist. That's actually perfect. Christopher Walken doesn't need to understand the joke. He just needs to believe in the character. And something about this cowbell-obsessed producer appeals to him. Maybe it's the character's passion. Maybe it's his complete confidence in his own ridiculous vision. "I'll do it," he decides. But Christopher Walken doesn't just agree to perform the sketch. He decides to make it his own. He starts thinking about this character, this producer who sees something in cowbell that nobody else understands. What would motivate someone like that? What would drive them to champion such an unusual perspective? Saturday afternoon, dress rehearsal. The cast runs through More Cowbell for the first time with Christopher Walken. They're expecting him to play it broadly, like a typical Saturday Night Live celebrity cameo. Instead, he does something unexpected. He plays it like it's Shakespeare. Christopher Walken delivers every line about cowbell with the same intensity he brought to The Deer Hunter. He treats this music producer's passion for percussion instruments like it's a matter of life and death. When he says, "I got a fever," and the only prescription is more cowbell, it's not a punchline. It's a desperate plea from a man whose very soul depends on cowbell. The cast struggles not to break character. Will Ferrell, playing opposite him, has to bite the inside of his cheek to keep from laughing. But Christopher Walken is completely committed. He's found the truth in this absurd character, and he's playing it with absolute conviction. "Explore the space," Walken tells Will Ferrell between takes, referring to the cowbell performance. "Find the cowbell's voice. Let it speak through you." He's talking about cowbell like other actors talk about Hamlet. Saturday night, 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes until showtime. Christopher Walken is in his dressing room, but he's not preparing like other hosts. He's not running lines or practicing entrances. He's listening to "Don't Fear the Reaper" on headphones, eyes closed, completely focused. "What are you doing?" a production assistant asks. Hearing the cowbell, Walken replies without opening his eyes, understanding its place in the musical landscape. This is Christopher Walken treating a 5-minute comedy sketch like it's the most important performance of his career. 11:58 p.m., 2 minutes until live television. The cast gathers backstage for final notes. Most Saturday Night Live sketches get last-minute adjustments, small changes to improve timing or clarity. But Christopher Walken has a different kind of note. "I want to add something," he tells Will Ferrell. "When I say more cowbell, I want to really mean it. I want people to feel my need for cowbell. This is happening. Christopher Walken is about to go on live television and make America believe in cowbell." 12:47 a.m. The sketch begins. Studio 8H transforms into a 1,970 seconds recording studio. Blue Oyster Cult, played by the Saturday Night Live cast, is recording their hit song. Will Ferrell enters with his cowbell, enthusiastic and slightly awkward. But when Christopher Walken appears as the producer, something magical happens. He doesn't just enter the scene, he commands it. His presence immediately elevates the entire sketch, from silly comedy to something approaching theater. "I got a fever," he says, and somehow those words contain multitudes, and the only prescription is more cowbell. It's not just a line, it's a manifesto. Christopher Walken has turned this music producer into a man with a vision, a dreamer who sees possibilities where others see noise. When he encourages Will Ferrell to explore the space, he's not just talking about stage directions. He's talking about artistic expression. The live audience immediately understands they're witnessing something special. This isn't typical Saturday Night Live comedy. This is Christopher Walken transforming absurdity into art through pure commitment. But here's where the sketch becomes legendary. About 3 minutes in, Christopher Walken starts improvising. Not the dialogue, he sticks to the script. But his physical performance, his gestures, his way of moving through the scene, he starts conducting the cowbell like he's leading a symphony orchestra. His hands move with the rhythm, guiding Will Ferrell's performance with the intensity of a master musician. When he says, "more cowbell," his entire body communicates the desperate need for more percussion. The other cast members, playing the band members, are supposed to look frustrated by all the cowbell talk. Instead, they're struggling not to break character because Christopher Walken's performance is so unexpectedly brilliant. "Really explore the space," he tells Will Ferrell, and the way he says it suggests that cowbell isn't just an instrument. It's a philosophy of life. The sketch ends with Christopher Walken nodding approvingly as Will Ferrell plays his cowbell solo. The look on his face suggests he's just witnessed the creation of musical history. In his mind, this cowbell-obsessed producer has just achieved something beautiful. The live audience erupts in applause, but it's not just polite Saturday Night Live applause. They know they've seen something special. Backstage after the show, the cast and crew are buzzing. Everyone recognizes that more cowbell was different. Christopher Walken elevated it beyond typical sketch comedy through pure commitment and unexpected depth. "I don't think I've ever seen someone take cowbell that seriously," Jimmy Fallon says. "I don't take cowbell seriously," Christopher Walken replies with that slight smile. "I take the character seriously. He takes cowbell seriously." But nobody involved in the production is prepared for what happens next. Over the following weeks, more cowbell becomes a cultural phenomenon. Before YouTube, before social media, before the internet infrastructure that usually spreads viral content, the sketch spreads through pure word of mouth. People start quoting it at work, "I got a fever," and the only prescription is more cowbell becomes the answer to everything. The phrase shows up on t-shirts, bumper stickers, coffee mugs, late-night talk show hosts reference it, other TV shows parody it. Christopher Walken, accomplished dramatic actor and Oscar winner, suddenly becomes known for cowbell. But here's what makes this story even more incredible. Christopher Walken embraces it. Other serious actors might be embarrassed by being known for silly comedy. Walken sees it differently. People enjoy it, he says in interviews. It makes them happy. That's not a bad thing for an actor to achieve. Over the next 20 years, More Cowbell becomes one of the most quoted sketches in Saturday Night Live history. It spawns countless memes, parodies, and tributes. Music producers actually start adding more cowbell to songs as an inside joke. The phrase enters common usage as a way to describe any situation where someone thinks the solution is simply more of something. But the real impact goes beyond comedy. More cowbell changes how people see Christopher Walken. Suddenly, the intense, dramatic actor is also capable of brilliant comedy. It opens doors to roles he never would have been considered for before. Directors start writing comedy parts specifically for him, knowing that his ability to play absurd situations with complete seriousness creates a unique kind of humor. His appearances in Wedding Crashers, Hairspray, and other comedies can all be traced back to that 5-minute sketch about cowbell. In 2010, 10 years after the sketch aired, Christopher Walken appears on Saturday Night Live again as a guest. During his opening monologue, the audience starts chanting, "More cowbell, more cowbell." Instead of being annoyed, Walken smiles. "You know," he says, "I actually do have a fever, and you know what I need." The audience screams the response, "More cowbell." "That's right," Walken says. "But tonight, let's explore some other spaces too." It's perfect. 20 years later, Christopher Walken is still committed to the bit, still finding new ways to make people smile through pure dedication to whatever role he's playing. The lesson of More Cowbell is simple but profound. Commitment transforms everything. Take anything seriously enough, and it becomes art. Believe in your character completely, and audiences will believe too. Christopher Walken didn't set out to become a meme. He just approached a silly sketch with the same intensity he brought to his Oscar-winning dramatic roles. And in doing so, he accidentally created something that brings joy to millions of people every day. That's the power of pure commitment. That's what happens when an artist treats every performance, no matter how small, like it matters. And sometimes, if you're really dedicated to your craft, you don't just get more cowbell, you get immortality. That's the 5 minutes that changed everything. Not through flash or spectacle, but through the simple act of believing completely in the importance of cowbell. More cowbell, indeed.